going on, guys? It is Wednesday night again, and here we are. How are you tonight? Thank you for joining me for Wednesday night Squadron Live. Always a fun time for me, and I hope it is always a fun time for you. I look forward to this every week, and like I always say on Wednesday nights, it gets here faster than I think it's going to, and here we are again. So thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it. I hope that you have been having a great week. I have busy as always, but that's a good thing. Rather be a little bit too busy than not quite busy enough. At least that's what I keep telling myself. Uh, so it's all good over here, and I hope the same for you. Um, got the last couple of weeks, I had absolutely no plan for the evening, and we ended up going for an hour and a half just talking about models anyway. Well, tonight I have a little bit of a plan that'll take at least a few minutes, and that's going to be about 3D printing, which it's not going to be quite as elaborate of a show as I was had in my mind, going back to the weeks sneaking up on you. Just you never have enough time to do everything that you want for these things, but that's all right. I've got a little bit of setup over here, and we'll take a look at that in a minute. Let's see. See, there we go. Got some goodies over there, and we'll take a look at some what are 3D prints and how do they work and how do you use them? Because a lot of us have used 3D printed parts, but there's a lot of people who have not. A lot of people who have no idea what it even means. So we'll get into just the surface of what a 3D part is, what is a 3D printer, how they work, just in general terms. And then we'll take a look at a few 3D printed parts, talk about what glues work, what glues don't work, and we will use some cutters and some knives over there to cut some of them, and you can see if it works or not. I'm going to see if it works or not. So it'll be fun here in a few minutes. But let's see who we've got in the chat with us tonight to start off, like we always do. The Lawn Care Novice is here. Good to see you tonight, buddy. Do I ever get any Cessna aircraft? The answer to this question is the same answer for a variety of different questions that we get from time to time, whether it's Cessna or whether it's any other subject matter that you don't generally see model kits of. We've got all the P-51s and Titanics and Sherman tanks that you can possibly imagine, but sometimes we would like to see something that you just don't see very often. In your case, the Cessna, and my answer is always, if the manufacturers that we represent, that we carry their products and distribute their products, if they produce them, we'll carry them. In the case of the Cessnas, the last time that I recall, and I could be forgetting somebody, but the last company that I recall seeing a lot of those offered was by Minicraft, the brand Minicraft that made plastic model kits. They did a lot of aircraft. They did a very nice 350th scale Titanic. They did a lot of good stuff, but they went out of business due to the fact that they sold their business. They didn't go out of business. I shouldn't say that. They sold their business, and Academy Models now owns them. They own the molds, and Academy has started over the last few months to re-release some of the Minicraft molds, or excuse me, they have started using the molds to re-release some of those kits as Academy kits. They're not going to, at least at this point, they're not going to continue the Minicraft brand, but they've been putting some of those kits out. So hopefully they'll get some of those planes back out, the Cessnas and all that. And if they do, we'll certainly carry them. So hopefully that gives you a little insight as to how we operate. If a manufacturer that we represent produces it, we'll do our very best to carry it. But sometimes some of the, unfortunately, the non-military aircraft, these manufacturers sometimes look over them, I guess is the best way to describe it. You do see them from time to time, civilian planes, airliners, that kind of stuff, commercial planes, but not near as often as the military subjects. And that just comes down to the fact that that's the bread and butter for most of these plastic kit companies, and they know they can sell it. We've talked about it on this show before. Why are we getting another Mustang? Unfortunately, it's because the manufacturers know that the mass market, that's what they want. Believe it or not. So anyway, we'll see how it goes. Joseph, how are you tonight, buddy? And Jeff coming to us from Utah. And Rex wanting to know about the jig for the Dora trucks that we were talking about last week that Robert created. He sent me a copy of it, and I have no idea where that jig is at the moment, because when he sent it to me, I still lived in Ellijay, and I still have it somewhere, but it is packed up, and I do not know where it is. I will have to get in touch with Robert. Perhaps he's in the chat room tonight. Perhaps he knows how he created that jig and knows the dimensions. Perhaps not. But if I can find that, I'll be happy. He asked me to use it and send it on to the next guy. So if I can find it, it is certainly yours or whoever else's that needs it. Robert just wanted everybody to be able to use that. But I got to find it. It is packed up somewhere. So let's see. David, good to see you tonight, buddy. Let's see. And David, okay, so I do apologize about that. So phone calls. Up to this point, I really like talking to my customers. And up to this point, I have tried my best to take all of the phone calls. Unfortunately, the phone calls are getting more and more and more, and our phone lines stay busy the majority of the day now. I operate our phones between the hours of 10 and 3 Eastern Time, Monday through Friday. And the reason it's 10 to 3 is I usually get in, I don't know, around 7 or so, and between 7 and 7:30 and get started. So starting the phones at 10 gives me a couple hours to get things going for the day. And then after 3, it gives me a little bit of time to shut down for the day, get the warehouse locked up and all that. But between 10 and 3, those phone lines stay pretty slammed. And I do apologize when I'm on the phone. There's nobody else to answer. And like I said, up to now, up to recently, it's not been that big of a problem. I've been able to get to everybody, but it's becoming more and more of an issue that we're missing calls, and I do apologize about that. What this probably means is that sometime in the near future, perhaps after the first of the year, I will probably be training a couple of other people to take phone calls along with me. So the good part about that is that we won't miss as many calls. The bad part is I won't get to speak with each and every one of you every time you call, but that's all right. That's part of it. And I do apologize about you not being able to reach me this week. All I can say is if we don't answer, or if I don't answer, just give me a call right back, and I will do my best to get with you as quickly as possible. Let's see. Mark got your order today. Awesome. Well, I'm glad you got it. Hope you get whatever you ordered out and check it out, and I'm sure you'll love it, and looking forward to seeing how you get it built. Let's see. Danny is here tonight. I hope you're having a great week too, Danny. I am. It's good to see you. David's with us tonight. Good to see you. Wes coming to us from Central Florida. Good to see you tonight, buddy. I'm glad you got your order quickly. That's what we try to do. If we always try to do our part, and thankfully the post office did their part this time for you, Wes. So they, last week or maybe the week before, it was a bash post office night for me. But I don't know if they were listening or what. But ever since then, things have been a little bit smoother sailing around the shop and in tracking world land. for us. We've not had near as much trouble the last couple of weeks. So I don't know what changed for the post office, but hopefully you have perhaps experienced similar uh, positive things from the post office. I don't know. I'm sure it'll get bad again, and it's always a roller coaster with the shipping companies. But let's see, Bill's here tonight. Good to see you, buddy. And Derek, good to see you. Greg, hello to you too. And Ken's with us. Good to see you, buddy. Ed's with us tonight. Good to see you. Let's see. And Michael got your gecko air cushion. Man, that is one of the few kits that I brought to check out tonight and look at a little bit. This is just a super cool kit. It's it's just something different. And Gecko Models, it's a I guess relatively new company. It's a really new company for us at Squadron. And you got to check this thing out. It's very neat. The cushion itself is molded in black, and it's pretty big. A lot of people are asking me how big this thing is, and there you go. Let's see. Here's your bottle of Tamiya cement for scale, but it's a pretty nice size little kit here, and all sorts of other stuff. And the interesting thing about it is, which kind of goes along with later tonight's theme, they've got some 3D parts included in it as well. Can't really see it on this camera, but it's just a really neat, interesting kit. The unfortunate part about it is everybody else thought it was neat and interesting too, and we sold out of them like the day we got them this week. We were able to get all of our pre-orders filled, but we've got more coming, and I will probably open that back up for pre-orders tomorrow if I can remember to do it, but before Friday anyway, and do a pre-order for the second wave, as we do from time to time on popular kits that sell out. But glad you got yours, Michael. It's pretty cool, and I'm looking forward to seeing some of you guys get that built. I am sure you will get to it before me. Good to see you tonight, Ted. Let's see. And Steven, how about a full show on me working on the Dora? So, the master at work. I am no master, but I appreciate the gesture. I'm just a guy having a good time, and I do the best I can, and it's good enough for me. But I really want to do that. And it's interesting you mentioned this. So I've been working on it from time to time. You can see it there in the background of my workbench that we'll move over to here in a little while. But I've been working on it off and on over the last couple of weeks since I got it back out from moving. And so my son, both of my sons, well, heck, my little girl too, they're all into Legos now. Well, they've been into Legos, but what they're into now is using their iPads or their tablet, whatever it is that they have, and they're doing these stop motion videos with the Legos. So, they'll set the guy up, and my oldest son has two comic book characters, and he's doing a fight scene. So he'll set them up, and the stop motion app, you take a picture, and then it tells you to reset the scene. So he'll take them and he'll slightly move them and do another one and slightly move them. And after it's all done, he's taken like, I don't know, a couple hundred pictures, and I come home and he shows me the video. It's really neat how it works. And we were talking about I should use that same app that he's using to do a stop motion video of building the Dora. Now, he's taken a couple hundred pictures of his figures. I don't even know how many pictures it would take to do that with this, but the idea is cool, because basically I guess I would set the camera up somewhere and basically take a picture after each piece that I glue on. Now, the only problem with this is, on a normal model kit, I guess you would say, is moving it around. But this Dora is so big I actually have not been moving it at all while I've been building it. I do all the sub-assemblies, but then I attach the sub-assemblies to the main chassis or the the main part, and that doesn't move. So I don't know, maybe I can do something like that. That would be cool. That way I can do all the pictures and then I can do a fast-paced video at the end. But I can see that being interesting, a lot more interesting than just watching me put it together because this thing is time consuming. But we will see. All right, David, how long has Squadron been advertising on eBay? So, eBay, we have always sold on eBay with Squadron, and before that with Free Time Hobbies. I actually have two different eBay accounts. One is a Squadron and one is an eBay. Or, of course, it's eBay. One is a Free Time Hobbies, but the Free Time Hobbies account, you won't find it right now because there's nothing listed there. So we have always had that, but we primarily use that to reach a different audience. There are some customers who just all they do is shop on eBay. They probably don't even know Squadron exists. They're just eBay shoppers. So you will probably notice if you shop on our eBay store that our prices are higher there, generally speaking. And that's just because eBay is an expensive place to do business. So if it's all the same to you, it's always better for us if you order directly on our website. But eBay is there. Please use it if you need. I understand sometimes I'll get an eBay gift card from somebody as a gift. I got to use it on eBay. So that's why we have it there. It's the majority of our products are there. Not everything. I would say probably 75% of our products are listed there. So it's there. Use it if you need to or want to. Just know that you will usually get a better deal on our website. And if you ever find anything on eBay that you can't find on our website, it's on the website somewhere. Just shoot me an email and let me know what it is, and I will find it because it might be hidden or miscategorized. And in that point, I can fix it. That would be a big help to me. So. All right, Tom, good to see you. Trick or treat, everyone. Oh yeah, that is coming up, I guess, tomorrow night. If I had any kids coming up to the house and knocked on the door, wonder what they would do if I handed them a plastic model kit sprue. They probably wouldn't have a clue. And I'm not giving out sprues at my house tomorrow night, so don't you guys show up. Ken's with us tonight. Good to see you. Oh, and Tom, you got the Blue Angels and the Thunderbirds Friday and Saturday. That's going to be fun. That's awesome. I've seen the Blue Angels. I've never seen the Thunderbirds. Hopefully I can fix that one of these days soon. David, good to see you tonight. Jeremiah was a bullfrog. Good to see you. TJ's with us. And Kimberly's with us tonight. Good to see you. You got it, buddy. Can't go wrong with a Tamiya kit. Let's see. Oh, cool. I had not heard that, Tom, that the Naval Aviation Museum has their F4U ready. Gonna hang it from the ceiling. Okay. Well, at least it'll be there to see. Good to see you, Frank. I'd say good evening, but you are correct. For you, it is good morning. So, hope you're going to have a great day today. Thanks for tuning in to what is our evening. Good to see you, Robert and TD. And Greg, are we dropping the AK paints? Unfortunately, for now, yes. They don't do well for us. The Vallejo, Tamiya, that's where it's at for us, for Squadron, and ICM's new paint is really kind of starting to take off, and all we're selling at the moment is the sets. I've got the individual bottles, but I just haven't even had a chance to list them yet because the sets are doing so well. So AK is just going to take a back seat for a while, and perhaps that'll change one day in the future. But we got a couple of other paint brands that we are in talks of bringing in. A one is a certain Japanese brand that you would probably like, and another is a brand that's very similar to AK that you would probably like. So, oh, and I guess there's a third too that's a particular lacquer based paint that I personally love. So we've got some other stuff coming that'll be in the 2025 plans. So we will see how that goes. Howdy to you too, Mark. Good to see you tonight, buddy. Let's see. Got a birthday going on Saturday. Happy birthday to you, Tom. Happy birthday to you too, Frank. Or belated happy birthday. Good to see you tonight, Scott. And John's with us tonight. And Kenneth is right here in Georgia with us. See, going back to the Cessna that we were talking about right at the beginning. Yeah, the as we were talking about eBay, talking about Evil Bay, those mini craft kits, and I don't know if that's the one you're talking about here, Tom, but any of those mini craft kits, they we had a bunch of them in stock, and as soon as mini craft announced that they were gone or being sold, all of our stock went like that. So there's perhaps somebody out there in Evil Bay land, as Tom's calling it, that might be able to hook you up with that. Let's see. Yeah, and Jeremiah, the Mission Models paint, I guess I failed to mention that we do sell it too, and it's good. I just personally have not used it yet, so I can't speak for how well I like it. But we sell it, so customers seem to like it. The only thing that I've got some, I was intending on doing my B26 with it, not B26, B25 with it, and because I want to learn their two-step process that it's a two-step process paint. You've got to have this additive that you put in the paint. Kind of interesting how it's supposed to work. So I'm glad you like it. I'm looking forward to trying it sometime soon. Let's see. All right, Randy's here. Good to see you tonight. And all right, so here's one of the other kits that I brought this evening to show. And this one I'm pretty excited about. We've been talking about border models and their Command and Conquer Red Alert game series models. This is just cool. This, of course, I'm younger than some of you guys, but this speaks to my childhood. The Command and Conquer series came out in the mid 90s when I was a kid playing that kind of stuff on the computer. And this particular model is based on the Kirov airship that was in Red Alert 2. And this is just a very, very cool kit. They had two tank models that they released as a part of this series first, an Apocalypse tank and a Grizzly tank. And I mean, they're definitely from Red Alert, but unless you're like really into the game, you may not know that. Even if if you saw the advertisements for the games, you know what this is. That's kind of like the poster child for Red Alert 2. But anyway, a lot of people have been asking me how big this thing is going to be, and here's your answer. So it's two halves, and I know it's in the bag here, so it's kind of shiny. Oh, there we go. So there you go. It's not humongous, but it's not small. It's a pretty good size. And in that video that I showed last week of the kind of advertisement for this thing, it does include all of the lights and the motors to make the propellers spin. So you get a big bag, well, not big, but you get a little bag of wires and all this kind of stuff too. So it's going to be a fun build. This is something I have been looking forward to since they announced it. So there you go. And that's another one, just like the Gecko air cushion. we did fine with our pre-orders and ordered accordingly. But as soon as they got here, I guess everybody all of a sudden realized they needed one, and we sold out of that one too shortly after they came in. So we've got more coming, and just like the air cushion, I'll probably open this back up for Wave 2 pre-orders as well. And fingers crossed, we should be getting those. It'll be the very end of the year. Third or fourth week in December, or possibly the first or second week in January. Shipping time. Actually, I shouldn't even say that, because shipping times this time of year are just really wacky, even more so than the rest of the year. All right. All right. Here is Lee Liebold. How are you, buddy? And since I got him pulled up, I've got to say, Lee is the guy that has all of the Don Greer and all the other artists, but most of them are Don Greer. That's why I always say that. But anyway, the original paintings that were used for the front covers of the Squadron Signal books, the in-action books, the walk-around books, that kind of thing. And we have been posting these on our website for sale over the last, I don't know, several weeks now. And we just put a few more on. Let's see, I'm trying to get this pulled up here. We just put a few more on just the other day. If you go to our website at squadron.com and click on all products, and over here under other products, click on artwork, you will see what we currently have available. Most of them are available. You'll see a few of them that are gone, but as they sell out, I try to go through here and clean it up. So the only ones that are showing are the ones that are still available. Now, I've had a couple of people email and ask, is this it? Is this everything? Or is there going to be more? And I think the concern is perhaps you've only got wall space for one of these, or perhaps you've only budgeted to buy one. And even though you really might like the North Carolina, if you buy this today, what are we going to post next week that you might like better? And I understand that. So what Lee told me is probably the best course of action to take is let's do this. And let's see. Well, if I could spell. David Doyle Books, which David Doyle is a good friend of ours, and he is an author who does the Squadron Signal books for us. You can go to his website, and if I can find where it's at, I never can find this page. Just type in Google David Doyle Books Squadron, and it'll come right up. It'll be the first link on his website. There it is, daviddoylebooks.com/Squadron Signal. I've been working on a checklist of Squadron Signal books on our website, and one day I'll get it done. But right now, David's got it done. So if you click on this little link down here, click here for the reference listing. David has 99% of every Squadron book ever printed posted here on his website. Now, they're not for sale because they don't exist. But this is just a reference so you can go back and see what all there was. Here's the very first Squadron Signal book ever. I mean, you can see these old school, the way they used to do these covers. Scroll way on down here past all of these, and man, my internet is slow tonight. Wow, it's ridiculously slow. We'll come back to that in just a moment. I'll show you where the rest of the books are. But the point is, come here, and you can scroll through and see what all the different front covers ever were. Now, what Lee has told me is if any of you see something, or maybe you know a book, you've got a book and you're like, man, I'd like to have that front cover, the original painting. Or if you're just curious what is available, you can come over here to David's site and look through this listing, and you'll see every one of them listed. Now, you won't see the back covers, but those are also available. Lee's got the back covers. He's got a lot of the inside artwork. Here we go. This is what I was trying to talk about a minute ago. Down here, you can click on the different series. So that was all the planes. You can click on here and see the other. I mean, he's got all this stuff. Lee does. Now, there's one minor issue with me saying he has all of these. The fact is, he doesn't have all of them. Obviously, he has sold some of them. We have sold some of them for him. Uh, I've bought some and I've got them hanging at the shop. So a lot of them are already spoken for, so to speak. But the other big issue is some of the older ones, and this would primarily be some of the really old ones. But out in Texas, where Squadron used to be, they had a big place, and from what I understand, a lot of the original paintings at some point were taken to basically what was described to me as a barn uh, to store them in. And they sat there for, I don't know, years. They sat there for some amount of time and they were basically ruined and they were no good. So they are gone forever. So just because you see it in David's website or just because you have the book doesn't necessarily mean it's available. But go through, pick out something, shoot me an email at info@squadron.com and tell me what you would like. And I'll get with Lee and he'll go through his archives and we'll see if what you want is available. Lee is going to continue taking pictures of what he's got, sending me the information. I'm going to continue posting them to the website, 5 or 10 a week until they're eventually done. I've got another half a dozen or so, maybe 10 that I'm going to be listing hopefully by Friday. I've got them in my email from him. But if you don't see what you're looking for, or if you're curious what might become available, take a look at David's list. Send me an email, and we'll let you know if it's available and get you a price. So there you go, Lee. Hopefully, I explained that well enough. All right. Kimberly says the best night of the week is Wednesday. Well, I appreciate that. And Bill coming to us right up the road in Murfreesboro. Good to see you tonight. Let's see. Bernard's with us. Good to see you, buddy. The way is here. Oh, all right. Bill says, I sounded good on the Mojo. I did not realize it was posted yet. So you've heard me talk about from time to time the plastic model Mojo. And let me see. Let me pull up their website real quick. I did they had me back on their show. It's been a couple weeks now. All of their shows are pre-recorded. So I wasn't quite sure when it was going to hit, but yeah, there it is. So plasticmodelmojo.com. You can go check out their website and click on, it's on their front page, the latest episodes. And here we are, Vendor Spotlight with updates from Kit MASX. I guess I got to listen, see who that is. And then Squadron. So that all we really talked about, they wanted to know an update about our move, our new warehouse, which we are still setting up and working. It's like the never-ending project. Here, I will show you. Let's see. Show you a picture I took today. There you go. So this is what we were doing today. We decided we needed more shelves, so we reconfigured some things and ordered another couple of bundles of 2x4s and OSB and started making more what we use as storage shelves. We don't buy the big pallet racks because they're just so expensive. And me and now thankfully a couple of our other guys are capable of using a nail gun and cutting wood, so we build them ourselves. It ends up being way cheaper for us, and besides, it's the southern redneck thing to do. Build your own stuff, I guess. But that's what we've been doing. But that's kind of what I talked with the Mojo guys about. We went through moving, and they were just kind of curious about what was going on and how that was going. And then the last half of the interview with my part of the show, we went through the Planes, Names, and Dames books. They were very interested in that, more so than I realized they were going to be. So we talked about that for a while, and it was fun. So check that out sometime. Those are some great guys. And if you've not listened to any of the Plastic Model Mojo podcasts, make sure to check them out. It's pretty neat. Recon, are we going to carry Atom paint? If you were talking about the Atom paints made by Ammo by MIG, uh, we are working on that. That is one of those brands that we're looking at. So we will see. Those paints look very, very interesting. All right. Well, let me. I love going through here and talking with everybody, but I did want to get into this 3D print stuff tonight. So let me slide over here and we'll talk about that a little bit. So um, let me start by saying I am not a 3D printing expert. Um, kind of like talking about not being a master modeler. As far as 3D printing goes, I'm just a guy, and I have a good time with it. It is a lot of fun. Outside of my normal, I say normal ship modeling and uh, aircraft, the military modeling that I do love and enjoy. One of my other hobbies is painting figure models, and the majority of the kind of stuff that I like, they just they don't make model kits of it. So a lot of the stuff that I like to build, I mean, you do have to glue them together and sand them. I mean, they are model kits, but they're 3D printed. A lot of those that I end up doing are things that I have 3D printed, and so I do enjoy it. But is in the business side of it, like we touched on a little bit last week, 3D printing, it has really, well, it's changed model building. It has added to model building, and in many cases, it has replaced what I refer to as traditional resin casting. Now, traditional resin casting still exists. In fact, one of the kits that I brought here from Black Cat Models is, you kind of get the best of both worlds, and I'll show you what I mean in a minute. But 3D printing, it's been around for quite a while. When we were in Ellijay, one of my employees there named Jay, back in the 80s, he used to work for Monogram, and and he had a lot going on with design and development there. And I remember a while back, he told me that some of the very, very, very early pioneers of 3D printing, I guess, I don't know what company, it doesn't matter, but he said they were approached even way back then. This would have been probably the early 90s. I don't remember exactly, but approached back then about this new upcoming technology, and would they like to be, get into that. And he said back then it was just so crude that you, there was nothing you could use it for in the model industry. But the point is, it was already starting to be something then. Now, fast forward to the early 2000s, and it definitely existed. Next week, no, not next week. Next week, I've got the show and tell, but the week after that, we're going to do. I'm going to have a guest on here with me, uh, who was involved in resin ship model company production, and I can't think, resin ship production in the early 2000s, and they were 3D printing their master hulls all the way back then. So 2005, 2006, 7, 8, right through there, they were already 3D printing master patterns that they would, sand up, prime, make perfect, and they would use that as a master to create a rubber mold from. So it's been around a while. It keeps getting better and better. better, cheaper, more accessible. Fast forward another decade or so, you start seeing uh, places like Shapeways. A lot of you that are into 3D printing, that's probably the name that you know. If you know any print house name, it was Shapeways, who is gone now. But you started seeing companies like this where you could have a part designed and they would print it for you. So a lot of people used 3D software, and when you create a part, you're using a computer. Um, Programs like Rhino 3D, very popular in the figure sculpting world. ZBrush or Blender, those types of programs are very popular. I'm sure there's dozens of programs that I don't even know exist, but these 3D software. You were able to start learning how to use these in places like Shapeways, and others would have these machines that back then could have cost 50,000, 100,000, maybe more for these machines, but that's kind of how it was. Fast forward another decade up to just a few years ago, and now for just a few $100s, you and I can both have a 3D printer that I can hold with one hand and sit on my desk. This particular one is made by a company called Elegoo, and this is a Mars 3 is the model. And I think I paid, I don't know, $300 for this. I mean, so what it used to be versus the price, the ease of use, relatively speaking, and the availability is just crazy. And this one, I got some resin on it, so it doesn't open very easily. These bases, if you've never seen a 3D printer, the reason that these tops are this color, this is actually a UV, ultraviolet light protection, because these resins that are used in these 3D printers, they're cured by UV light. So if you were to stick this by a window without that cover on it, your part would be toast before you ever got done with it. But this is basically a 3D printer. This is a dirty 3D printer that I did not clean up on my last job, which on this one, if you notice, the vat that holds the resin is not here. I had intended on having this sitting over here running tonight, but I can't find my vats. They're packed up somewhere. And when I got this one out of the box, I remembered that the last time I ran this one, my FEP plate broke or ripped in the middle of the job and got resin everywhere. But anyway, this is the basics of a resin 3D printer. There are other types of 3D printers. Another very popular one that I do not personally have much knowledge. Well, I have knowledge, but I don't have any experience using, is a filament printer, which just is another process, another way of doing it. Most of the products that we use in our model kit building come off of a resin printer, because the detail you can achieve is a lot greater. But this is basically it. I am sure that the technology behind getting them to work is extravagant, but the basics of how this operates is relatively simple. Uh, like I mentioned, you have a vat of resin, and let me show you what I mean by a vat of resin. Let's see. All right, so this was a video I did night before last. This is my big production printer that I've got. And so this plate that you see lowering down into this bed of resin, that's called the build plate. And the little silver thing there holding the resin, that's the vat I'm talking about that I'm missing on mine that I'm holding. But the way this works is you've got a file, which actually I can show you that here too. Let's see. Get this open. So this build plate goes down into this resin, and under the build plate is clear, and there's if you're at all interested in this, I am sure that you have gone and watched other YouTube videos that are going to be a lot more detailed than me. But I'm just giving you a quick rundown so we can go look at some parts. Uh, but it's going to go down, and up under there, what you can't see it doing at the moment is there's actually an LCD or an LED or whatever. There's a little screen, think iPad screen right here. And what that does is it actually creates an image, ultraviolet image, and it is projecting that image onto that build plate. So the build plate comes down and sandwiches itself between the resin and the screen there. And you're seeing here, this is the front of my system. That's what it is currently projecting onto into the resin in the build plate at the moment. So it's going to project that, and that UV light is going to come from the screen, project that, and it's going to cure a very extremely small layer of resin in that exact design to the build plate. And then it's going to raise up and it's going to come down, and the computer is going to create the next image for it to make. Now, this particular job that I did took I don't know, 3 or 4 hours, and then this is what I had at the end. Let's see, 3 hours and 29 minutes. And at the end of this 29 or 3 hours and 29 minutes, I had a build plate full of 3D printed stuff. And now it looks gross right there because it's got all the extra resin hanging off. You've got to, you'll see here, I'm going to turn it sideways and hang it there and let it drip for 10 or 15 minutes. And once that drips, I'm going to take those off of there. I'm going to go over to my cleaning station and I'm going to clean all that up. And then finally, I'm going to end up, this particular job, it was about 700 scale cage masts. And then there was also a bunch of 20 millimeter Oerlikons on there too. So it's a relatively easy or relatively simple process. The machine, the way it works. Now, it can be extremely frustrating because things can go wrong. It can be extremely messy, but the basics of how it works is pretty straightforward. And the way I really like to describe it to people is, imagine a printer, like a regular, like inkjet desktop printer, where you're printing a piece of paper, and you print just whatever. You print some letter that you typed up or whatever. You print this letter, and then you take that same piece of paper that you just printed on and you put it back in the printer, and you print that same letter again. And then you take the paper out, put it back in the printer, and print it again. And you do this about 2 or 3, maybe 4,000 times, literally. Imagine what's going to happen. Every time you put it in there and print it again, there's a small layer of ink, extremely small. And for the first 10 or 20 or 50 or 100 times you do it, you probably aren't even going to see a difference. But after 3 or 4,000 times of doing this, that layer of ink is going to get thicker and thicker and thicker and thicker. It's the same way that these 3D printers work. It's doing a layer at the time. So you can imagine it's that UV light is cooking each layer on top of each layer. So it's going to go over and over and over and over again. I printed a figure last night or yesterday. I started it at whatever time. It was done by the time I got home. It's a 1/6 scale figure. The build time on the printer was 29 and a half hours. Yes, 29 hours to print this. So 3D printing is not fast. Now, the quality that you get on these machines these days, I kind of joked last week about comparing it to modern TVs. You used to think that 1080p was like, oh wow, this is like the best it's ever going to be. And then they came out with 4K, and then they came out with 8K, and it's like, no matter, you always think it's the best it's ever going to be, and somehow it gets better. And then you look back a few years before, and you're like, wow, how did we think that looks good? It's probably going to be the same with this 3D printing stuff. I mean, this little 700 scale cage mast, I can't imagine how do you get any better quality than this. I mean, perfect is perfect. I'm sure they will. But the one area that I know that they can improve on, and that I'm sure they're working on, is the speed of these machines, because 29 hours to print one figure, that's why it's a hobby. It would be very hard to sell things that take 29 hours to build. Now, don't get me wrong, people do it. There are plenty of people that we sell their products. One that I can think of, Flying Leathernecks. He's down in Atlanta, so we've talked about his products before, and he was telling me about his set. He's got dozens of printers. There's a friend of mine out in California that 3D prints, and you remember when I used to stream my show from my arcade room in LJ? So my buddy Laramie, he does 3D printing, and the reason I know about the filament printers a little bit is that's what he uses. But he 3D prints these uh, marquee lights. Like, so for my Pac-Man game, the top of it is lit up now, but the one that I bought, it didn't. So Laramie 3D prints these aftermarket light up marquees that really work well. Well, I was talking to him about it one time. I was like, how many of these, because each one of those took like 10 hours to make. I said, how many printers do you have? He said he's got like 50 something printers, or did, set up in his workshop. So these guys that are doing these large productions, and that's what they do. It's nothing for these guys to have rows and rows and rows of printers. Um, so, like I said, speed, that is definitely something that I am sure will improve in the future. But that's kind of the basics of how the 3D printing works. And my mouse is wireless, and it just died. So bear with me while I plug it in real quick. Now, after these parts come off of the printer, I mentioned that you have to clean them, which you do. You got to clean them up. And the biggest thing that a lot of people ask me about is, okay, after I've cleaned it up, what do I do with these? These, they don't even know what to call them, but these are the supports that are printed. Now, in a plastic model kit, we would call this the sprue. Let's see, where's a grab one of my Dora sprues. So in a plastic model kit, this is very, very common, right? This is a sprue, and we cut our parts out of a sprue. There you have it. So that's pretty common. We're all familiar with that. Well, on the 3D printing stuff, it's no different other than the way it looks. And on these little cage masts, you can barely see it down here, but we'll open this figure in a second and I'll show you. But this is one of those things that you got to do it your way. You got to do some trial and error and see what works for you, because every 3D printed part has the potential of being different. For the most part, plastic model kit sprues are pretty much the same. Yes, I know that some sprues are thicker than others. I know there's 2 or 3 different types of plastic. I know there's small differences. But overall, plastic model kit sprues are plastic model kit sprues. Now go over into resin, and there's a few differences there. Mainly, what country is the resin from? Everybody talks about that smelly resin. Those resins tend to be harder than some resins that might be softer and easier to deal with. The way that the parts were molded, we talked about those big 350 scale ship models with those long casting plugs on the bottom that are horrible to deal with, that kind of thing. And the same thing is true in 3D printing. So on this one, on these little cage masks that we make, a lot of people say you can't use sprue cutters for 3D parts. And in some cases, that's true. But the way we try to set these little cage masks up, the supports on these are so small that these sprue cutters are just absolutely perfect and makes a beautiful cut that you don't even hardly have to clean. So again, every sprue or every 3D part is going to be different. But what we try to do, these cage masks are Blue Ridge Models cage masks. I try to make it to where they're very easy to cut out using things that all of us have, because I build these things too. And if I don't want to use it, then I don't want to produce it. Now, that may be a lot of the reason that I don't get more stuff produced because I'm too hard on our products. And this, if you're wondering, this is our 200 scale cage mast prototype that I haven't done anything with yet, but they're very cool. But let's look at this company is H3 Models, and they make a very, very, very nice product. Now, H3 Models, they are out of Korea, South Korea, and the way that they produce, or excuse me, the way that they design their figures is very cool to me. They actually use 3D scanning technology, and let's see, they use 3D scanners to actually scan real people. Actors, I guess you could say, because what they do, they get authentic uniforms, authentic gear, and dress these guys up, and then scan them into the computer. So it's not just a 3D sculpted figure that somebody sculpted in ZBrush or something. This is an actual guy dressed up in authentic gear. So it's really neat and really realistic, and the quality of their prints are pretty dang good. So let's see, get this open real quick. But the reason I want to point this out is this will give you an idea of some of the sprue. If I can get the bag open, dang. All right, let me cut it open. So this will probably look a little bit more familiar to anybody who has seen 3D parts. So this, let me slide back over here real quick and show you something. The way that this works. So you see this plate on the bottom. So the way this came off of a printer is basically like this. So when you saw that build plate going down into that resin, every time it pulled up, it had another layer starting at the top. That was the first layer. And it went down and down. And every time it came up, it pulled another layer out of the resin. And you eventually ended up with this. So move back over here. So what happens is, the reason you have to have these supports that look this way is when that plate goes down, if the layer that it is currently projecting is not connected in some way or another to this original plate, then the plate has nothing to pull that out of the resin with, and it's basically going to get stuck to the bottom. That's what happened to I told you that my FEP plate ripped, and the FEP is basically the plastic that is sandwiched between the resin vat and the LCD screen on the bottom. It's a very thin piece of some type of plastic. Um, but so that's why you get all these. Now, if you were to print this knife straight up like this, you wouldn't have to have any supports. But you turn it this way and print it like that, you're going to have supports running all the way up here because every layer has to be in some way or another connected to this base. So if you see when you're running up here that the gun there, it runs up this way, but if you can imagine the way it works, it's working its way up. It's going to work out that way. But you're starting to see more and more complex ways of making these supports, and H3 models does a good job. If you notice on here, and you probably can't from the camera here, but they have no supports on his actual face. And the reason is you don't want supports on his face. That's going to be an ugly mark. I got supports down in here on his suit. Well, even when I cut it off, if I make a little blemish, that's going to be a heck of a lot easier to fix and hide and cover up than if it was right on his nose. So that's a big thing with these guys that are setting up these 3D parts, is thinking of exactly where these supports need to go, and there's a lot of trial and error to it. But anyway, so just like the cage masts, anytime you see these really really thin supports, now this is by no means a guarantee that your 3D printed parts are going to work with a cutter like this, because these cutters will mess up a 3D part. 3D printed resin is very brittle. But for me, on these types of things, I have no problem with these cutters. And this particular cutter is our Squadron high precision cutter. It's a single blade cutter, guillotine style, meaning only one side of them is sharp, and it slices through. And I have no problem with these. Now, if you get a part or a bigger part that has a large sprue, if you will, you got to be careful using these, because when you cut through there, because of how brittle this resin is, like for example, these sprues up here, let me cut this off of here first. I'll show you. So I don't know if you can see it, but these up here that are attached, if you try to cut through there, it'll cut through it. But when you cut through it, it shifts. It's hard to explain over a camera. But if you look close, and I don't know if you can see this or not, I apologize. The way H3 does it is the very end of their sprue there, it changes the size. Let's see if I can pull that off and show you. Dang, you're not going to be able to see it. It changes the size, and it goes down to a smaller, almost a tapered length, and that size of connection point is perfect for this style of a single bladed cutter, and you won't have any problem. And what I like to try to do is, as I work through getting the small points off, and as soon as I have the tree detached from the model, I just start snipping them off just to get them out of my way. But this is and I don't want to use those cutters for the big parts. This is the one thing that's just kind of, I mean, it is what it is, but it's a little bit time consuming about these 3D printed parts, is getting your actual part out of the support tree and being able to use it. And the more complex your part is, the more supports it's going to have, the longer it's going to take you to clean it out of these trees. But the more you pull it out, you start seeing what's in there, and Like, oh yeah, that looks really good. Now, again, a lot of people will tell you that you can't use sprue nippers like this to do this. And this right here, I'm gonna try to, I don't know if you saw that. I'm just cutting the big pieces off now. When I cut it right there, the bottom half of it that was still connected to the plate snapped off. And that's what'll happen if you have big points connected to your actual part. When you go to cut it, it'll take some of the part with it. So when people tell you that, that is true. It will happen. But if you get a good part like these H3 models that have these small connection points where it actually touches the part, and use a very nice set of clippers or cutters, um, I usually don't have any problem. Uh, but again, kind of like I was talking about earlier, every single resin 3D printed part has the potential of being different because there's different types of resins. There's different, oh, there's just so many different combinations of why your part could be different than this part that I'm holding in my hand. So, but after you use several different 3D printed parts, you kind of start getting a feel for what the medium is. And then if you're a ship modeler and you use a lot of Black Cat stuff, for the most part, Ben over at Black Cat uses the same material on all this stuff. Now that's not to say that he's never changed. If something newer and better comes out, but for the most part, if you build things from one company, you can expect things to kind of be similar. But if you get a 3D printed part from a new brand that you've never tried, maybe do a little bit of trial and error, and see what's going to happen before you start cutting on your part. Get a feel for what kind of resin they're using or whatever, just to make sure you don't mess your parts up. Because when you snap these parts, which is very easy to do, uh, you'll get frustrated really quick. Now, I will tell you this: if you do snap apart, the good thing is usually they're pretty clean breaks because this stuff is, like I said, it's very brittle. So when the parts do break, assuming you can find the part and it didn't fly across the room into the carpet monster, usually you can glue them back together and get a pretty dang clean cut. So, all right, so there is that guy. And I'm going to jump back over here to the computer real quick in case you guys are asking questions. All right, so yeah, there's our guy that we just cut out, and it's just probably hard to, I don't know how to make this thing focus. Yeah, it's not going to focus. Well, anyway, and by the way, this is a 1/16 scale figure from them. Oh, there it goes. Well, a little bit. I don't know. It's really good stuff, and again, a nice set of nippers on small connection points works for me. A lot of people talk about using heated knife blades, very, very fine razor saws. All those things are great. They really are. But I try, but that's what works for me, is what you just saw. So let me see what you guys are talking about here in the chat real quick. And then we'll jump back over there and talk about glues on 3D printed parts. Let's see, Ed. This little Mars 3 that I was showing you, I don't remember. It's not very big. I don't have my ruler with me. I don't know, what's that? Maybe 3 or 4 inches by about 7 or 8 inches, maybe. Um, It's a very small one, but the other one that I was showing a minute ago, it's pretty large. I don't know the exact size of it, but I mean, I can print a 1-to-1 scale head in it. I mean, it's pretty big, and it prints my 1/6 scale figures that are 12 inches tall. It prints those almost standing up. I turn them ever so slightly sideways, and I can kind of squeeze two of them in there. So it's a big one. That's a Frozen Mega 8S or whatever the newer production model is. And Jeff, you just got the Saturn 4. You know, I saw that. I saw advertisements for that last week, and I was thinking about one. I've got a couple of Saturn 2s, and I really liked the Saturn 2s to start with, but I don't know if it's something I did, but I started not being able to keep the plates straight from job to job. But I don't know. The Saturn 4 looks really nice, though. So Tom, what do I use to clean my 3D printed parts? This is one of those things that some of you guys are probably going to scream and say, "Why do you do that?" But I use denatured alcohol. It works really good. I can buy it at Home Depot or Lowe's, and it works really good for me. I use a water based, usually use a water based resin. Mark, yeah, anything that takes 29 hours to run certainly is not cheap. But then again, it all goes into why 3D printed parts cost what they cost. You know, we've talked about before the design and the development time, the research and development is a big part of all these parts. But then the actual production of them that costs money too. Everything from the electric bill, which is not nothing, uh, the amount of time that the machines take to run. You got to clean the parts. You got to throw a little bit of time and effort in there for failed prints, which the I was talking about the Saturn II not being able to keep my build plate straight. You know, sometimes these things get out of alignment. Your FEP wears out. Sometimes you get I had a bad batch of resin one time that was past its shelf life, and I didn't know it, and it would not cure. So there's all sorts of things that can go wrong, just like any type of production. I mean, this is production after all. So all these different things go into how these companies price this stuff. Uh, let's see. Robert. Yeah. So I've got a lot of 700 and 350 scale figures that have become pretty popular. 200 scale figures have started becoming popular, and I've started seeing some 144 scale pop up. So who knows? We'll see all sorts of stuff. Yeah, Frank, talking about the speed of them, they are super slow right now, but like I said, that is, in my opinion, that is the most obvious place for these printer companies to improve on is the speed. But I do not know how they go about making these things exactly, so I'll let them figure out how to make them faster. Let's see, Mark. Mark's going to continue to stick with manufactured plastic kits. So, 3D printing is not for everybody, and to be honest with you, full 3D printed model kits, they do exist. For me in the figure world, that's the majority of the figures I get. I mean, all the X Plus figures, I get them all. They're great. I love them, but they only do a few every year. So then I can collect those, I can build those, and then I can add to that collection in the 3D world. Um, but then move over to ship models, for example. Fully 3D printed ship models, they do exist. There's a handful of companies that produce those. However, same thing with aircraft, same thing with armor. But today, the main, at least in my opinion, and from what we see, the main use for 3D printing in model kit world for military kits is not actually printing a full vehicle, but rather to add to or do aftermarket. So you buy a whatever ship model, 350 scale battleship. 3D, you're not probably, you can, again, I'm not saying it's not possible, but usually what you'll see is you'll get a 350 scale battleship model, but then all the things that you would normally buy as aftermarket or that you do buy as aftermarket, some of it's still going to be photo etch. I mean, it's hard to beat photo etch rails. People have been trying it with 3D printing and with a little bit of success, but in my opinion, photo etch is where it's at for handrails. But anyway, you get your handrails, you get your brass turned barrels, and then you want to upgrade all of your anti-aircraft guns. You want to upgrade whatever it is you want to upgrade. And years ago, maybe you bought some resin parts. Veteran Models still makes really fantastic resin upgrades for this sort of thing. But those types of things are what you're going to most usually find in 3D printing these days. So let me jump back over here real quick, and I will show you that kit I was talking about. So this is a ship model from Black Cat Models. This is the Edsel class Coast Guard ship. And so this is cool. It's done by Black Cat Models. And the whole thing, oops, let's see. Oh, that's what I was trying to do. The whole thing is designed in 3D. So Ben designed this in 3D. Now, what I was talking about back in the early 2000s about my buddy doing 3D printed ship hulls and then casting them in resin, that's exactly what Ben did here. Now, he absolutely could have 3D printed these, one 3D print per kit. But you do have some possible issues with that, and perhaps some of you guys have experienced this when you're trying to print your own holes. The fact that this is supposed to be exactly straight and true, like this one pretty much is, as you can see, is a problem sometimes in 3D printing. In 3D printing, sometimes you can get this and it looks great today, and then you come back a couple of days later and all of a sudden it's bowing up and it's starting to turn into a banana. And we won't get into the reasons, the science behind why that happens with the materials, but because of that and perhaps costs and the fact that this would probably take several hours to print, Ben chose to cast that. But the entire rest of the ship, the entire rest of the kit, as you can see in these little packages here, I mean, and of course you get photo etch and brass barrels and all that as well. But the rest of the parts for the ship, as you can see, these are all 3D printed parts. So these are the types of things that I was talking about. Now, granted, this is a resin kit, Mark, and you were talking about plastic kits. But where I was going with this was for your plastic kits, you've got little 350 scale anti-aircraft gun, range finders, directors, all this kind of stuff, searchlights. I mean, there's some 20 millimeter Oerlikons in there. So all these kind of things that you would potentially want to upgrade on your plastic ship model kit. When you buy those upgrades, there's a pretty good chance that today in this market, they're going to be 3D printed parts. So, but I'm like you, Mark. My favorite way to do I like ship models. My favorite way to do a ship model is to start with a plastic kit. Most recently and currently is my Montana kits from Verifier and Trumpeter. I like to start with that and then add all the photo etch and 3D printed goodies that I can. Now, I'm always going to use the plastic hull. I'm going to always use, or probably always use, the plastic superstructures. But when you start getting into the stuff smaller than that, you can probably get better detail in the 3D printed stuff. So that's where we are today. Who knows what the future will bring? Let's see what else you guys are talking about in here. And then we'll jump over there to this glue real quick and try to wrap it up for the evening. Let's see. And yeah, Frank, these figures are pretty fantastic. Let's see. All right. I know I skipped over a few questions, but for time's sake, let me jump back over here because I know that one of the specific questions last week that kind of prompted tonight's topic was on glue for 3D printed parts. So let me jump into that real quick just to give you guys, and again, a lot of you already know this stuff, but this tonight was kind of for those who have not messed with 3D printed yet, don't really know a lot about it. And after tonight, hopefully you'll know a little bit more than you did. So, where's my guy? Here he is. So here's our little figure that we just cut out a few minutes ago. And we are all familiar with, well, let's see. We don't need to glue him. We will take this cage mast. And I don't know where we're going to glue it. We're just going to glue it right back to the base, just because we are. So we're all familiar with my personal favorite model glue, Tamiya Thin Cement. And we have talked before about the fact that this is in fact not glue at all. I can't glue my fingers together, not even close. So if you have bought any 3D printed parts, or perhaps you bought some parts and didn't even know they were 3D printed, but if you bought anything and it had these funky looking sprues that you had to cut off, now you know what it is. It's 3D printed parts. Anyway, if you got those and you got your handy dandy Tamiya Thin Cement out and you started caking it on and using a ridiculous amount of glue because it just won't stick, what you're going to find out is no matter how hard you try and how much of it you use, it's simply not going to work. And that is because, like I have said before, this this cement is not glue at all. I've got two little plastic tabs here. Let's see, off of this Dora sprue over here. You put these on, glue these two little plastic parts together. You're actually not gluing them together. You're actually melting them together, and it's becoming one piece as opposed to two pieces glued together. And that's a chemical reaction, a chemical bond that is this just going to work on plastic, styrene, soft plastic, that kind of thing. It's just not going to work on 3D printed parts. It's not going to work on resin parts. It's not going to work on photo etch parts. So what do we need? You got two options, or at least I have two options. Super glue is my go-to. That's my number one option. And let's see, get a little bit out here. And CA glue, as we call it in our hobby, which is short for a word I won't try to pronounce and embarrass myself. But this super glue or CA glue, cyanoacrylate, is that right? This is kind of what you use for resin and 3D printed parts. And just like you can imagine, it works just like any glue, super gluing anything else, including your fingers. And that is what you need to use for 3D printed parts. Easy peasy, right? Now, another option that is pretty popular in the model kit world these days is Kenny Loop is a good friend of mine, and he creates what he calls Gator's Grip. And Gator's Grip is available in two different versions. This is the thin blend, which is just a thinned down version of his original blend. And this is kind of like a white glue. You can, if you've never seen it, imagine Elmer's glue. Same type of thing, but Kenny's formula is really nice for gluing pretty much anything you can't use plastic model cement for. Couple of things about this. It was primarily designed to be used for photo etch parts. Kenny is a ship modeler like myself. So the problem, if any of you have built any ships, the problem with a lot of this stuff in 350 and 700 scale is the parts are so ridiculously small that super glue sometimes cakes up on the ends of them and just turns out ugly. Well, Kenny's Gator Grip, and usually I use toothpicks for this and shave them down really fine, but you can take this Gator Grip and you can pretty much place it wherever you need it. And after it dries, it's going to be perfectly clear and very, very, very thin and barely there. The one I hate to say bad thing about it, but I will. The one bad thing about it is, I guess I'm not a patient guy, and it does take quite a while to dry, just like any other white glue. And when I say quite a long time, it's more than 10 seconds, like your super glue is going to do. So depending on what I'm using or what I'm building, what I'm gluing together, if it's not a plastic part, my arsenal is those two choices, Gator's Grip and the CA glue. Now, I have the thin blend Gator Grip, the original, which is a little thicker, and then in my CA glue arsenal, I personally use three differents: a thick, a thin, and a medium. A medium is my go-to, use it 90% of the time, but you have a few different options there too, as I'm sure some of you do as well. But that's the general rundown. Don't be scared of the 3D print part sprues. Yes, you got to be careful, but just jump in there, buy you a few things or print you a few things, and just start playing around with it and seeing what works out for you. Get you some good nippers. Experiment with some little razor saws, those extremely small fine tooth razor saws that CMK makes some that we sell that are just ridiculously small. I don't know how they make them, but those work good. But don't think about it too much. And I've had a lot of people say that they have not used 3D printed parts because they're scared of them. Don't be scared of them. Jump in there, try them, and it can add a lot of quality to your builds for sure. So we're going to call it a night there, guys. Next week, show and tell. Please email me your submissions for show and tell, your model kits that you have finished. I'm looking forward to seeing them. We're going to have a great show, or I hope we do. You guys send me the models in, we'll show them, and we will have a good show. The week after that, I've got a special guest on here with me that I'm looking forward to. We're going to go back and talk about resin ship casting, and that is going to transition into how I got into business, into what became Free Time Hobbies, that fast forward to now, what became Squadron. So it's going to be a fun night. So got a lot of exciting things coming up. One thing that I want to mention, you did not get an email from me this afternoon. Wednesday afternoon emails has kind of become a tradition with our final countdown sale. So I do apologize that that never happened today, but it was for a reason. Let's just say that Black Friday is coming up, which happens in November. And this particular Friday happens to be the first day of November. So let's just see what happens Friday, guys. Y'all take it easy, and I'll see you soon.